The girl had always loved music. From the moment she first heard a piano, she felt something in her heart that she could not explain. It was as if every note spoke directly to her, and every melody carried a story she wanted to tell. At home, she had tried to learn by herself, pressing the keys softly and listening to the sounds she could make. Sometimes they were wrong, clumsy and jarring, but she loved them anyway because they were hers. She would practice for hours trying to understand the rhythm, the feeling behind each note, and slowly she began to improve. She found joy in every small success, a smile forming each time she played a tune correctly. The day of the community event had arrived. People from the neighborhood were gathering in the small hall where a piano had been set up for anyone brave enough to perform. The girl had wanted to join for a long time, and now she had finally gathered the courage. She had rehearsed her piece over and over again in her mind, imagining how she would start, how the notes would flow, and how it might feel to play in front of others. Still, as she walked toward the piano, her heart raced. The hall was full of people, their chatter filling the room, and some of the faces looked curious while others looked doubtful. She could feel their eyes on her, weighing her, judging her before she even began. When she reached the piano, she took a moment to steady herself. Her fingers hovered over the keys, trembling slightly. She heard a few snickers from the crowd and saw some people whispering to one another. They were laughing at her. She could feel a lump in her throat, the sting of embarrassment creeping into her chest. Some voices were not kind, making jokes about her age, her small stature, or the idea that she could ever play something impressive. She wanted to run away, hide, and never come back. But then, she remembered all the nights she had spent alone practicing quietly, imagining herself playing beautifully. She remembered the way the piano had felt under her fingers, the way the music had always calmed her, and a spark of courage lit inside her. She sat down on the bench, taking a deep breath. The air around her felt thick with tension, but she tried to focus on what she knew best: the music. She placed her fingers lightly on the keys, feeling the familiar smoothness beneath her touch. The first note she pressed was soft, almost hesitant, but it was hers. It sounded in the room, simple yet honest. She played the next few notes carefully, building her confidence as she went. The snickers from the audience did not disappear entirely, but she ignored them. She focused on the sound, on the melody that she had been carrying in her mind for months. As she continued, she remembered the countless moments when she had thought she couldn't do it, when a piece had seemed too hard or her fingers too small to reach the notes. She had wanted to give up many times, but something inside her had kept pushing her forward. Now all that practice, all those tiny victories were coming together. She could feel the music flowing through her fingers, connecting her to the piano and, in a way, to everyone watching. She did not play for the audience. She played for herself, for the music that had always been her companion and her comfort. The room was quiet except for the sound of the piano. People who had been laughing now paused to listen. They tilted their heads, curious about what was happening. The girl's notes were still soft, but there was a clarity to them, a sweetness that had not been there before. She was careful with every movement, making sure each note carried the right emotion. She remembered her lessons in patience, the time she had repeated a difficult section until it sounded right. Now it was happening in front of an audience, and although it scared her, it also thrilled her. She was sharing something very personal, something that came from inside her heart. The laughter had mostly faded, replaced by whispers and curious glances. The girl noticed that some people were leaning forward, trying to hear more clearly. She felt a small surge of hope. Maybe they were starting to see what she had seen all along, that the music was not just sound, but something alive, something that could make people feel. She continued, pressing the keys with care, letting the melody rise and fall, carrying her emotions with it. Each note was a small triumph over the doubts, over the mocking faces, over her own nervousness. As she played, she thought about all the people who had laughed at her when she first tried to play at home. She remembered their skepticism, their surprise that someone so young could even think about performing. She thought about the hours she had spent alone, feeling awkward and clumsy and yet loving every moment she could make music. That love was what kept her going, and now it was transforming into something powerful. The piano was no longer just an instrument. It was a bridge between her and the people in the room. Each note told a story, each chord carried her courage. She played with her heart open, without worrying about mistakes. The first few notes were tentative, but soon she found a rhythm that felt natural, almost effortless. Her fingers moved more confidently, guided by months of practice and an innate sense of the music. She could feel the energy in the room changing. Some faces that had been skeptical were now focused, their eyes wide with attention. She realized that she was no longer just performing. She was communicating, reaching people in a way words never could. The girl's confidence grew with each measure. She remembered her favorite parts of the piece, the sections where she could let herself shine, and she played them with care and passion. She could see that even some of the people who had laughed were now paying close attention. Their expressions had softened, and they seemed to be caught up in the music, unaware of themselves or of their earlier mockery. The girl felt a warm rush of emotion. She was connecting with them, showing them the beauty she had always known was possible. She had almost forgotten the fear she had felt at the start. The laughter and whispers were distant now, almost like they belonged to another world. She focused only on the piano and the music she wanted to share. Each note was deliberate, each chord full of feeling. She remembered the advice her teacher had once given her. Play not for approval, but for truth, for the honesty of the music. She realized that was exactly what she was doing. She was not trying to prove anything to anyone. She was simply sharing a piece of herself. The piece she was playing began to take on a life of its own. The melody swelled and dipped, carrying a story of courage, of perseverance, of hope. She felt the music rising in her chest, and she allowed it to guide her hands. The audience was silent, listening, captivated by the sincerity of her performance. She had never felt so seen, so understood, even by strangers. The notes seemed to float in the air, filling the room with an emotion that was impossible to ignore. For the girl, this was more than a performance. It was a triumph over fear, over self-doubt, over the judgments of others. It was proof that passion and dedication could overcome ridicule. And though the first part of the piece was coming to an end, she knew that this was just the beginning. There were more notes to play, more emotions to share, and she was ready for them. The laughter from before had no power here. The piano and the music were hers, and she would let them speak louder than any words ever could. By the time she finished the first part of her performance, there was a quiet in the room that was different from before. It was respectful, thoughtful, and full of anticipation. People were leaning forward, eyes bright, waiting to hear what would come next. The girl took a small, steadying breath. She felt a smile tug at her lips, a mixture of relief and joy. She had started the journey, and already, something incredible was happening. She realized that even though she had been laughed at, she had found the courage to continue. And that courage had begun to turn doubt into wonder, ridicule into attention, and a small girl into someone who could touch hearts with the simple beauty of music. The girl could feel her heart beating faster as she looked at the piano keys. She had played the first notes and felt a small sense of victory, but she knew the real challenge was still ahead. The hall was quiet, and every eye seemed to be fixed on her. She could sense the mix of curiosity and doubt in the audience, the way some people still wondered if she could truly play. She took a deep breath, trying to calm herself. She told herself that mistakes were okay, and that she just needed to focus on the music and her love for it. As she began the next part of the piece, her fingers moved more confidently. She remembered the countless hours spent at home, practicing each chord, repeating the hardest sections until they felt natural. Sometimes she would play the same line over and over for hours, her small fingers pressing the keys until they could glide across them without thought. The frustration and patience of those hours now felt like a preparation for this exact moment. She realized that all her hard work was paying off, and that thought gave her courage. She felt herself becoming absorbed in the music, letting her emotions flow through her hands. The melody carried her thoughts and memories, of quiet evenings practicing alone, of the first time she had heard someone play and dreamed of touching the keys herself, and of the small victories that had made her smile. She pressed each key carefully, listening to the sound, adjusting her timing, and adding the expression she had learned from her teacher. This part of the piece was more complicated, with faster notes and more changes in rhythm, but she was ready. She had prepared for this. Her fingers danced over the keys, moving as if they had a mind of their own, guided by her heart. The audience could feel a change in the atmosphere. What had started as doubt and laughter was slowly turning into curiosity and attention. People leaned in slightly, eyes fixed on the girl, some with mouths slightly open. They were beginning to notice the skill and dedication she had put into her practice. Even those who had doubted her could no longer ignore the beauty that was unfolding. The girl played with care, not for their approval, but because she loved the music and wanted to share it. The hall was filled with the sound of her notes, soft and clear, gentle yet full of feeling. Her mind wandered briefly to the times she had felt the most discouraged. She remembered moments when a piece seemed impossible, when her fingers refused to move the way she wanted. She had wanted to quit so many times, but something inside her always pushed her forward. The love of music, the desire to create, and the dream of performing one day. Now as she played, she realized that all those struggles had made her stronger. They had taught her patience, perseverance, and the joy of small victories. Every note she played now was a tribute to the hours she had spent learning, to the times she had felt alone but refused to give up. The melody grew richer as she continued. She could feel the rhythm flowing through her, the notes connecting to form a story. Each phrase had its own meaning, a small expression of her heart. She added subtle changes in tempo and dynamics, softening some notes, emphasizing others, letting the music breathe. She was no longer just pressing keys. She was speaking with the piano, telling a story that words could never capture. The audience responded in their own way, sitting quietly, listening intently, allowing the music to reach them. She could feel her confidence growing. The initial fear that had gripped her seemed distant now, replaced by a focus and determination she had never experienced before. She thought about the laughter and skepticism she had faced and realized it no longer mattered. The music was hers, and she could share it freely. Each note was a declaration of her dedication, her courage, and her passion. She knew that she was capable of more than she had ever imagined. The audience could see it too, in the way she played with complete focus and sincerity. The piece became more complex, with fast passages and intricate patterns. She had practiced these moments countless times at home, learning to let her fingers move naturally and confidently. Now in front of an audience, she played with precision and grace. She did not think about the people watching. She thought only about the music and the feelings she wanted to express. Her fingers moved quickly yet smoothly, hitting the right notes with ease. Every mistake she had feared seemed to vanish, replaced by control and confidence. The sound of the piano filled the room, capturing the attention of everyone present. She remembered the first time she had imagined playing in front of people. Back then she had been terrified, imagining the laughter and the judgment. But now she realized that facing the audience was not as frightening as she had thought. The music itself carried her, guiding her through each measure, each phrase. She felt the connection between herself and the instrument, the connection that had always been there but was now stronger than ever. The piano was no longer a challenge. It was a partner, and together they told a story that no one could ignore. The audience was completely absorbed. Even those who had been skeptical from the beginning were now silent, eyes fixed on the girl and the piano. They could see the determination in her face, the care in her movements, and the emotion in every note. The music was powerful, drawing them into the story she was telling. She was no longer a small girl attempting to play. She was an artist expressing her heart through the keys. The room seemed to hold its breath, hanging on every note, waiting to see what she would do next. She continued, her hands moving fluidly over the keys. Each section of the piece flowed into the next, carrying the story forward. She remembered all the times she had practiced alone, struggling to get each part right, and she smiled to herself. Every hour of effort, every mistake, every moment of doubt had led to this. She realized that her fear of being laughed at had been part of the journey, a challenge she had to overcome to reach this moment. And now as she played, she knew she had overcome it. The girl felt a sense of freedom. The music was no longer something to fear or something she had to prove. It was an extension of herself. She could express her joy, her hope, and her courage through the piano. She added subtle variations, small improvisations that reflected her personality and creativity. The audience noticed these details, their faces showing surprise and admiration. The laughter that had greeted her at the start was gone, replaced by awe and respect. People were beginning to see not just a young girl playing, but a talent that had been nurtured through dedication and love. As the piece progressed, the girl felt a deep satisfaction. She was sharing something very personal, something that could not be measured by age or experience alone. The music was a reflection of her journey, of the times she had struggled, learned, and grown. She felt a connection to everyone in the room, as if they were all sharing in her story. The piano was speaking for her, telling a tale of perseverance and passion that transcended words. She realized that she had reached a point where she could play with complete honesty, without fear, without hesitation. Her performance was reaching its peak. The complex sections flowed smoothly, the melody soaring and dipping with emotion. She felt a sense of exhilaration, a joy that came from doing something she loved and doing it well. The audience could feel it too. They were drawn in, experiencing the music alongside her, captivated by the beauty and the skill. Even those who had doubted her could not hide their amazement. She was no longer a girl being laughed at. She was a musician commanding attention with every note. By the end of this part of her performance, the girl felt a quiet pride. She had faced her fear, overcome the doubt, and expressed herself fully through her music. The audience was attentive, their expressions reflecting the emotion of the piece. She had not only played the notes, she had told a story, shared a part of her heart, and shown what dedication and courage could achieve. She realized that her journey was just beginning, that there were more pieces to play, more challenges to face, and more moments to captivate the hearts of those who listened. And in that moment she knew that she could continue, confident in her ability to transform fear into music and doubt into admiration. The girl had reached a point where the music seemed to flow through her rather than from her. Each note felt alive, each chord carried a depth she had never noticed before. Her hands moved effortlessly, guided by instinct and practice, telling a story that words could never capture. The audience was silent, hanging on to every note, drawn in by the sincerity and emotion of her performance. The laughter from before was completely gone, replaced by a mix of awe, curiosity, and admiration. As she played, she thought about how much she had grown. The girl remembered the countless nights when she had practiced alone, feeling frustrated when she couldn't get a passage right. She had sat at her small piano at home, tears sometimes forming as her fingers stumbled, yet she had never given up. Every mistake had been a lesson, every failed attempt a step closer to the music she now felt in her bones. Those hours of quiet perseverance had prepared her for this moment, and she could feel their impact now, as if the piano and the room itself recognized her effort. The melody became richer and more expressive. She was no longer thinking about the audience, the fear, or even the laughter that had welcomed her at the start. She was entirely absorbed in the music. The notes carried her emotions, joy, hope, and a quiet determination. Her fingers danced over the keys, sometimes moving quickly in complex patterns, other times slowing for emphasis, letting the room breathe with her. She felt free, liberated by the connection between her heart and the instrument. She noticed subtle changes in the audience. Faces that had once seemed skeptical now reflected wonder. Eyes were wide, some with surprise, some with delight. People were leaning forward, captivated by what they were hearing. Even those who had doubted her skill were beginning to see the truth of her dedication and talent. The girl felt a sense of quiet satisfaction. She had faced their judgment and continued to play, and now her music was speaking louder than any words ever could. The piece she had chosen demanded both technical skill and emotional depth. The girl had practiced it for months, learning to balance precision with expression. She had learned to make the music feel natural, to play it with the kind of emotion that could reach people's hearts. Now, as her hands moved confidently across the keys, she could feel the culmination of all her efforts. Every note, every pause, every swell of sound was purposeful. She could feel the story emerging, a story that told of courage, growth, and the beauty of persistence. Her fingers moved faster now, playing passages that had once seemed impossible. Each section flowed seamlessly into the next, the music rising and falling with the ebb and flow of her emotions. She remembered the hours she had spent slowing down tricky sections, repeating them until they felt natural. That dedication was paying off. The complexity of the piece did not intimidate her now. It exhilarated her. She felt alive, fully immersed in a moment that was both challenging and rewarding. The audience seemed to respond instinctively. The quiet murmur of whispers had vanished, replaced by full attention. They were drawn to the emotion, the skill, and the beauty of the music. Some faces showed tears, some smiles, and others simply gazed in wonder. The girl felt a warmth in her chest, knowing that her music was reaching them, touching their hearts in ways she had only dreamed of. She realized that performing was not just about impressing others. It was about connecting, and at that moment, she felt deeply connected to everyone in the room. She remembered the fear that had almost stopped her when she first approached the piano. The laughter, the doubt, the anxious heartbeat that had filled her chest, it all seemed so far away now. The girl understood that fear and courage could coexist. Courage was not the absence of fear, but the choice to continue despite it. Every note she played was a testament to that choice. She had chosen to continue, to trust herself and to share her music, and that decision had transformed the energy in the room. The melody reached a soft, reflective passage. She allowed herself a moment to breathe and feel the music fully. The softer notes conveyed vulnerability, a reminder that even strong performances had moments of fragility. Her fingers moved lightly, almost as if caressing the keys, and the sound resonated with emotion. The audience seemed to lean in, absorbing the subtleties, sensing the honesty in every touch. She realized that the power of music was in its ability to communicate without words, to convey what was felt rather than said. She transitioned to the next section, which demanded strength and precision. Her fingers flew across the keys, moving quickly but confidently. She could feel her body in rhythm with the piano, every movement intentional and expressive. The music had become a living entity, responding to her emotions and intentions. She felt a thrill in mastering the technical challenges while keeping the emotion intact. This balance was what she had practiced for, what she had dreamed of, and now she was living it fully. The audience's engagement continued to grow. Some were nodding subtly to the rhythm. Some were closing their eyes, letting the music carry them away. She noticed parents holding their children closer, sharing the moment as if it were theirs together. Even strangers seemed connected, bound by the beauty of the performance. The girl realized that her music had the power to bring people together, to create a shared experience of wonder and emotion. It was a feeling she had never imagined experiencing so fully. As the piece moved toward its climax, she poured every ounce of energy into the music. The piano resonated with power and passion. Her hands moved with purpose, her fingers striking each note clearly and decisively. She felt the adrenaline of performing, a mixture of excitement and focus that sharpened her senses. Every chord, every transition, every flourish was executed with care. She could feel the audience's attention, the shift from curiosity to admiration, and it gave her confidence. She was not just playing, she was captivating. Her mind briefly reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She remembered the people who had laughed, the moments of doubt, the private frustrations, and the small victories at home. Each memory carried a lesson, and each lesson had prepared her for this moment. She realized that the struggle itself had been part of the music, part of the story she was telling. Without it, the performance would not have the depth, the honesty, and the emotion that it now held. The girl felt a calm sense of purpose. The music was no longer a challenge to overcome. It was an expression of herself. Each note reflected her heart. Each phrase revealed her dedication and love for the piano. She could feel the energy of the room, the connection between herself and the audience, and it filled her with warmth. She knew that performing was about more than technique. It was about courage, authenticity, and the ability to touch others' hearts. The complex sections continued, but she navigated them effortlessly. Her fingers moved as if guided by instinct, flowing from one note to another, creating a melody that was both precise and full of feeling. She added subtle variations, small flourishes that reflected her creativity and personality. The audience noticed these details, and their expressions showed appreciation. They were captivated, completely engaged in the unfolding story of the music. As she reached the final passages of this part of the performance, the girl felt a mixture of relief and exhilaration. She had faced the fear, endured the doubt, and played with her heart wide open. The music had reached its peak, and she was fully immersed in the moment. The audience was silent, anticipating the resolution, hanging on to the final notes. She could feel the culmination of her effort and emotion, the release of tension as the piece approached its end. Her hands moved with confidence, delivering every note with clarity and emotion. The last chord of this section lingered in the room, resonating with warmth and depth. She allowed herself a brief pause, taking a deep breath and feeling the satisfaction of her accomplishment. The audience remained still for a moment, as if savoring the music, before soft applause began to ripple through the hall. The girl smiled quietly to herself, feeling the joy of having shared something personal and meaningful. She had transformed the initial doubt and laughter into attention and admiration, and the experience was more fulfilling than she had ever imagined. In that moment, the girl understood that her journey was far from over. She had faced one challenge, but there were more pieces to play, more stories to tell, and more hearts to touch. The music had given her courage, confidence, and a sense of purpose. She knew that she could continue, grow, and inspire others through her love of piano. This part of the performance had been a triumph, a moment where practice, patience, and passion had merged to create something beautiful and memorable. And she felt ready for whatever came next, knowing that every note she played carried her heart and her story into the world. The girl felt a surge of energy as she moved into the next part of her performance. The music seemed to lift her, carrying her across the piano keys with a confidence she had never known. Her hands flew over the notes, precise yet expressive, as if they had a mind of their own. She was fully immersed in the melody, and the room around her faded. The audience was still captivated, silent, watching every movement, listening to every sound, completely absorbed in the music that filled the hall. As she played, she remembered the early days when even a simple tune had felt impossible. She had been laughed at then, discouraged by the mistakes she made and the lack of understanding from those around her. Yet here she was, transforming that doubt into something beautiful. Each note she played carried a piece of her journey, a proof of her determination and love for the piano. She realized that all the hours of practice, the quiet struggles, and the moments of self-doubt had led to this moment of pure expression. The melody deepened and swelled, reflecting the emotions she had tucked away for so long. She thought about her fears, about the people who had doubted her abilities, and about the times she had felt she would never get it right. Each of those feelings now fueled her performance rather than hindering it. The music became her voice, speaking in ways that words never could. She allowed herself to feel every note, to let it rise and fall naturally, as though the piano and her heart were in perfect harmony. The audience could sense this transformation. The skeptics, the doubters, those who had once laughed, were now silent, their eyes wide, their expressions softening with awe. They could see the dedication behind every movement, the courage behind every note. The girl's performance was no longer just about playing the right notes. It was about conveying emotion, telling a story, and touching hearts. She felt a connection with the listeners that went beyond applause or approval. It was a shared understanding of beauty and effort. She approached a particularly challenging section of the piece. The notes were fast and intricate, demanding complete focus. Her fingers moved nimbly, guided by memory, practice, and instinct. She remembered the countless hours she had spent mastering these passages, the frustration and repetition, the tiny victories when her hands finally performed as she wished. Each challenge she had faced now became an opportunity to shine, to show that perseverance and love for her craft could overcome any obstacle. She felt exhilaration and determination in equal measure. The music carried her forward, the rhythm and melody weaving together a tapestry of sound that captivated the audience. The hall seemed to vibrate with the emotion of the performance, and the girl felt a sense of power and responsibility. She was not just playing notes. She was creating an experience, a memory, and an emotional journey for everyone present. The audience leaned in, drawn to the depth of expression and the skill displayed in every hand movement, every chord, every delicate nuance. She thought of the people who had doubted her, the snickers, the comments, and even the moments she had questioned herself. She realized that none of that mattered now. The music had transcended judgment and fear. It had become a pure expression of her heart, her passion, and her persistence. The piano was her companion, her ally, and through it, she communicated what she had always longed to share. The notes rose and fell with emotion, creating an invisible connection between her and the audience. As she continued, her confidence grew. She felt the music flowing naturally, her fingers moving as if guided by the melody itself. She was no longer conscious of mistakes or hesitation. The performance had become a part of her. She remembered how she had once struggled to reach the keys, to press the right note at the right time. And now she played with a fluidity that came from practice, patience, and passion. She understood the power of dedication and realized that the music itself rewarded her effort. The piece entered a dramatic and intense passage. She allowed herself to pour all her energy and emotion into her playing. Her hands moved with speed and accuracy, every chord precise, every note imbued with feeling. The audience was held captive, silent, sensing the dedication and emotion behind every sound. The girl felt exhilarated and focused, aware of the impact her music had. She knew that her perseverance, courage, and love for the piano had led her to this powerful moment. As the music swelled, she allowed her creativity to take the lead. She added subtle improvisations, slight changes in dynamics, and delicate flourishes that made the performance uniquely hers. The audience noticed these details and responded with visible appreciation. The laughter and doubt that had once surrounded her were replaced with admiration and respect. She felt proud not just for herself, but for the way her music could reach people, touch hearts, and change the mood in a room. She reached a softer, more reflective passage, allowing the audience to feel the vulnerability and depth of the music. The notes were delicate and tender, conveying emotions that were difficult to express in words. She thought about the early days, the private struggles, the fear of failure, and the joy of small successes. All of that had led to this moment, and now it was expressed through the piano. The audience listened, captivated by the honesty and emotion that poured from her fingertips. The girl felt a wave of exhilaration as she approached the final sections of this part of the performance. The music required both technical skill and emotional expression, and she felt ready. She moved through the complex passages with precision, her fingers dancing effortlessly across the keys. She felt a deep sense of satisfaction and pride. The audience could sense her mastery, her focus, and her passion, and they responded with rapt attention. She had transformed the initial doubt and ridicule into a performance that demanded respect and admiration. The piece began to wind down, the music softening and slowing, yet maintaining its depth and emotion. She played each note with care, ensuring that the final chords carried the story she had told throughout her performance. She felt the room's energy shift, the anticipation of completion and the respect of the audience settling around her. The laughter that had greeted her at the beginning was now completely gone, replaced by quiet awe and appreciation. She realized that she had not only overcome fear, but had also conveyed her heart to others through her music. As she reached the final note, she allowed it to linger, letting the sound resonate and fill the room. She held her hands over the keys for a brief moment, absorbing the reaction of the audience, feeling the connection that had formed through the music. The applause began slowly, soft at first, then building into a strong, warm wave. She smiled quietly, a mixture of relief, joy, and pride washing over her. The performance had been more than she had imagined. It was a triumph of courage, perseverance, and love for music. The girl realized that the experience had changed her. She understood that the fear and doubt she had faced were part of the journey, necessary for growth and discovery. The music had been her guide, helping her transform uncertainty into confidence and skepticism into admiration. She felt empowered, knowing that she could face challenges and overcome them with dedication and passion. The audience's reaction was a confirmation, not of her skill alone, but of the authenticity and emotion she had shared through her music. As the applause continued, she took a small bow, acknowledging the audience while keeping her heart open to the joy of the moment. She felt a deep sense of connection, knowing that her music had touched people in a meaningful way. The girl understood that this was just one step in her journey, that there would be more performances, more pieces to master, and more stories to tell. But in this moment, she felt the satisfaction of having shared her heart and passion with others, leaving an impression that would linger long after the last note had faded. The final part of the performance began with a calm, yet powerful energy. The girl felt a surge of emotion as she moved her fingers across the keys, playing with confidence and passion. Every note carried meaning, a story of perseverance, courage, and love for the music. She could feel the connection with the audience, their attention focused entirely on her, and it gave her a sense of strength she had never experienced before. She realized that this moment was the culmination of all her efforts, a stage where all her practice, patience, and determination came together. The melody rose and fell with emotion, reflecting the journey she had traveled. She thought about the early days, the hours she had spent alone, the mistakes, the frustrations, and the small victories that kept her going. Each note she played now was a testament to that journey. She no longer felt the fear that had gripped her at the start. Instead, she felt a quiet pride, a calm determination, and the exhilaration of sharing something deeply personal and meaningful with others. Her fingers moved effortlessly, the complex passages flowing with ease. She remembered the countless hours of repetition, the times she had struggled to play certain sections perfectly. All of that practice had shaped her into the musician she had become, allowing her to express herself fully. The audience could sense the depth of her dedication, their faces reflecting admiration, surprise, and awe. The laughter and doubt from before had vanished, replaced by respect and wonder. The girl felt a warmth in her heart, knowing that her music had touched them. She approached a dramatic section, the notes fast and intricate, demanding precision and emotion. Her hands moved skillfully, each chord clear, each phrase expressive. She felt alive, exhilarated by the challenge, and the audience was captivated. Some leaned forward, some closed their eyes, and some held their breath, all absorbed in the beauty and honesty of the music. The girl realized that she had not only played the notes but had communicated a story, a part of herself through her performance. This realization filled her with a sense of accomplishment and joy. The piece became more intense with sweeping melodies and powerful chords. She allowed herself to pour all her energy and emotion into the music, letting it flow freely. The audience was completely engaged, caught up in the ebb and flow of the performance. The girl felt a sense of liberation, as if the music had released her from the fears and doubts that had once held her back. She understood that this was the essence of performing, the ability to express oneself, to connect with others, and to create a shared experience of emotion and beauty. As the music softened, she allowed the audience to feel the vulnerability and tenderness of her performance. The delicate notes carried a sense of honesty and reflection, inviting listeners to share in her emotions. She thought of the moments when she had felt discouraged, when she had doubted herself, and realized that all of those experiences had contributed to the depth of her expression. The audience seemed to recognize this, their attention fully captured, their expressions a mirror of the emotions in the music. The girl's confidence continued to grow as she approached the final passages. She played with precision and passion, each note deliberate, each chord full of meaning. The audience could sense the culmination of her efforts, the journey she had taken, and the emotion she conveyed. She had transformed fear and doubt into a performance that resonated deeply with everyone present. Her music was no longer just a demonstration of skill. It was a story, a reflection of her heart and spirit. The complex passages flowed seamlessly, her fingers moving naturally across the keys. She added subtle nuances, small improvisations that showcased her creativity and individuality. The audience noticed these details, their expressions filled with admiration. The girl felt a sense of satisfaction and fulfillment, knowing that her music had captured their attention and hearts. She had taken something personal, something that had been nurtured in solitude, and shared it with the world in a way that was honest, moving, and inspiring. As the final section approached, the girl felt a mixture of excitement and calm. The notes became softer, more reflective, conveying a sense of closure and resolution. She allowed herself to savor each sound, each chord, feeling the resonance of the piano fill the room. The audience was silent, their anticipation palpable, fully immersed in the performance. The girl understood that this was the moment where all her efforts converged, where the music and emotion reached their peak, and where her journey had transformed into something tangible and meaningful. She played the last notes with care and intention, letting them linger, carrying the story of her journey through sound. The audience felt the conclusion, the sense of triumph and accomplishment, and responded with a collective exhale, as if releasing the emotions the music had evoked. The girl felt a wave of relief and joy, knowing that she had shared something profound and beautiful. She had faced her fears, overcome doubt, and revealed her heart through the piano. The applause began, soft at first, then growing into a strong, warm wave of appreciation and admiration. She took a small bow, acknowledging the audience, and felt the warmth of their response. People approached her afterward, expressing amazement, surprise, and respect. Many admitted they had doubted her, expecting her to falter, and were now humbled by her talent and dedication. The girl smiled quietly, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. She realized that the experience had changed her, showing her the power of perseverance, courage, and passion. She had learned that even when faced with ridicule and doubt, one could rise above it and leave a lasting impression. As she left the piano, the girl reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. She thought of the hours of practice, the mistakes, the frustration, and the determination that had fueled her growth. She knew that this was only the beginning, that there would be more performances, more challenges, and more opportunities to share her music. Yet in this moment she felt complete, proud of herself, and grateful for the experience. She had proven not just to the audience but to herself that courage and dedication could transform doubt into admiration. The girl walked away from the stage with a sense of accomplishment and joy. She knew that the music would always be a part of her, guiding her, inspiring her, and connecting her to others. The audience had seen her journey, felt her emotions, and recognized her dedication. She had shared something deeply personal, and received a response that confirmed her efforts were meaningful. The laughter and doubt from before were distant memories replaced by respect, admiration, and the knowledge that she had achieved something remarkable. In the quiet moments after the performance, the girl felt a sense of peace and contentment. She understood that the experience had taught her valuable lessons: the importance of perseverance, the power of passion, and the courage to continue despite fear or doubt. She knew that the journey of a musician was ongoing, filled with challenges, growth, and discovery. Yet she also knew that she had the strength and determination to face whatever came next. The piano would always be her companion, her voice, and her way of expressing her heart to the world. The girl's story was no longer just her own. It had become shared through the music she played. She had transformed skepticism into admiration, ridicule into respect, and fear into courage. Her performance had touched hearts, inspired others, and proven that dedication and passion could overcome doubt. As she left the hall, she carried with her the knowledge that she had accomplished something extraordinary, that her music had the power to move people, and that her journey was only beginning. She felt ready to face the future, confident in her ability to share her heart and soul through the piano, leaving a lasting impression wherever she played.